Why did I pick Buddhism, Zen Buddhism, Zazen, instead of Orthodox Christianity in Luke Smith fashion? Um, I don't know exactly, to be honest. I don't really remember. But I would consider Zen less of a religion and more of a collection of psychic technology. And that might sound a little weird and crazy, but I think Zen is actually compatible with other religions. It's not so much about what you believe in exactly, it's more about the practice and its benefits. Not that you should be striving for those benefits specifically. That's a big sin in Buddhism. It's heretical. But yeah, it's interesting because Carl Jung says a lot of people in the West are drawn in by religions of the East or in just in other countries because they have this mystical allure to them that our local religions, which I guess is Christianity, has kind of lost. And that's definitely true. I think Christianity in America, at least where I am, has lost its appeal because of this concept called simulacrum and simulation. It's this book, or maybe I'm getting those words the other way around, but that we choose some symbol to represent religion, and then the symbol slowly takes over and then becomes the dominating like version. And like the great example is people thinking like God is like a big floating guy in the sky, and all this like concrete imagery that's like clearly like against our scientific understanding, but that's just like a dumbed down symbol representation of what they're actually talking about. And for people that like want to understand the world deeply and aren't like purely visual based morons, it's a tough sell. So that's one reason, I guess. And we're also just accustomed to Christianity over here. And then other religions are like, oh, they have all these mystical powers, and you kind of fetishize them for being different and yeah, having these benefits. But they're basically the same thing. They're kind of well, when I was doing like the digital world tour and meeting a lot of people, a lot of the really good engineers are religious. And most of the people that aren't like also acknowledge that religion is a very powerful piece of human engineering. Maybe it's like reductionary to call it engineering, but it's like an incredibly intelligent system that keeps humanity running in a desirable way. And it, like if you don't believe in some divine power, if you think it's like humocentric, that is just completely designed by humans, it's still brilliant. But I wanted to address like the question at the beginning, because some Orthodox bros in my comments are like, that's paganism and blasphemous to follow Zen. But I don't necessarily think that, because ultimately, like, if your spiritual practice leads to the same basic behaviors, I don't think you should really be like trashing on someone else's means of practice. Well, yeah, I don't know. I'm not a religious scholar at all, so maybe there's some reason. And maybe like Orthodox Christianity is much closer to me culturally than Zen is, and like it would be easier to get certain benefits out of it. I think essentially the biggest benefit is that you're bolstering like the human element of love and connection and working together with and accepting your fellow humans, like realizing you're part of a bigger organism and it's not everyone for themselves, because that's how animals behave. And most religions kind of try to achieve that. Zen is like by trying to dissolve the ego and recognize that most of your thoughts are self-serving and very selfish, which is honestly mind-blowing. Like the more you realize it, the more you're like, wow, everything I think is just very, very selfish. So by dissolving the ego, you'll kind of realize that you're part of a bigger whole, and then you'll act in a loving and noble way. And then I guess I'm not like Christian, but going to church is like a communal thing where you're getting together with people and acknowledging like a higher incomprehensible direction. I don't know what I'm trying to say there exactly, but basically you're getting together and you're like, there's a bigger, more complex organism / process that we're part of. We should all just like chill out. And those are the main important points. But if you're acting in the same way, if you're like just kind to everyone and you help people out, like, why does it really matter what exact things you study or believe in? Like, isn't it all effectively the same thing? Like, if you're looking at the meta structure of it, it's like you believe in the continued existence and flourishing of humanity. Does it really matter like exactly what implementation details you use? Maybe it does, I don't know. I'm not an orthodox bro, but what's interesting also is they have other overlapping ideas, like thoughts being mostly self-serving is something Orthodox Christianity also recognizes. I know that from a Luke Smith video. I guess there's many patterns that people have observed again and again. But another difference is that the language and the culture will really shape how a religion develops. I read some scholarly papers from University of Honolulu, I think. Some kind viewer sent them to me, so thank you, about how Buddhism formed, and the language in Japan at least, they talk less with like personal pronouns and like distinctions between I and you, and that's like less of an important concept to them, and the concept of a self is more related to who you know. Like it's looking at like your local node in the graph of humanity and like doing one iteration of Dijkstra's algorithm or a couple iterations of Dijkstra's algorithm. Like, who are you as your relationships? And that gives rise to like a different kind of religion than a more individualistic, more, I don't know the word, singular version of you as we see it in the West. In the West and East is like a huge generalization. And yeah, I'm also not a religious scholar, but I'd be very interested to hear, because I think like a lot of the pop religion I've seen in the US is like just kind of disgusting to me. And I know that's not the case across the board, like pop Christianity. It's just like there's this kind of anti-intellectual version of it that's spread across the US. And yeah, it makes it unappealing, but that does not necessarily mean that I'm like against Christianity or Orthodox Christianity. Seems like more the legit strat. But yeah, I don't know. I'll make more videos talking about what I think the benefits of Zen are, but from reading some of the Zen literature, like even if it's further from me culturally, like the Zen scholars are spot on about a lot of thought patterns and a lot of ways of being that we have that are counterproductive, not good for us.